I just realized something pretty wild. $1,000 only gets you crumbs of XRP now. And that's no joke, right? If you tried to buy XRP today, you'd barely get a handful. And the crazy part? This might be just the beginning of XRP's big price journey, where most of us can only afford the dust left behind. So, the other night I'm doom scrolling crypto Twitter, as one does at 2 AM, and I see this tweet from someone named Xena, a known XRP pundit. Now, she basically says that XRP is heading to a price where regular folk will only be able to afford dust. Dust, like tiny fractions of a coin. So I nearly dropped my phone because only dust? As an XRP outsider looking in, that kind of sounded a little insane. I mean, I remember when XRP was just 20 cents and nobody really cared. Now it's kind of a flex to its own kind of brunch, if you will. Now I had to kind of find out if she was, for real or maybe just hyping the project up. And I promised you that what I discovered left me equal parts excited and a little uneasy. Now it might actually change even how you see XRP in your wallet, whether you have 1 or 1,000. Okay, picture this. Me, bleary-eyed, coffee in hand, digging through tweets and articles about XRP when I should actually be sleeping. Now Xena's tweet really got under my skin, right? She's saying that at the current price, XRP is becoming out of reach for the little guys. So I start doing the kind of math, and at that moment, XRP was kind of hovering around $3 and some change. Sure enough, Xena kind of pointed out exactly what $1,000 gets you now, roughly 315 XRP for $1,000. 315 XRP. That's it. Now I thought, wait a second, 315 XRP used to be nothing to kind of write home about. Heck, just last year, $1,000 would have gotten me over 2,000 XRP. So I double checked that and it was true, right? In July of 2024, XRP was around 48 cents. So if you do the math, you'd have bagged around 2,083 XRP with $1,000. Now, here we are a year later, the very same $1,000 gets you a tiny fraction of that amount. Mind a little bit blown. So it's kind of like going to a store with the same $20 and coming out with a lot less candy than before. It's kind of a bummer, right? So I sat there, kind of stunned, staring at these numbers. I even had that kind of little flashback, right? I remember back in the day, I had this friend who was an XRP true believer, and he was telling me, dude, buy a bag now while it's dirt cheap. And I was like, yeah, maybe later. I'm focused on Bitcoin and ETH. Typical me, right? Procrastinating. Fast forward, of course, now, and I'm looking at $3 per XRP and thinking, later has officially punched me in the face. Now, if I want the amount of XRP that used to cost 1,000, I would actually need $6,000 plus today. A bit of an ouch moment. And it's not just me and Xena noticing this, right? Another community voice, 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰𝗋, apparently said the very same thing when XRP hit $2, that even at $2, XRP was already pricing out retail investors. So in other words, regular kind of people who, were already kind of starting to feel XRP was getting too expensive for them at $2, now we're at $3. And I bet Farina's sitting, somewhere going, I told you so, right? A bit wild, right? A coin that was literally under $1 for what felt like forever is suddenly feeling expensive. So if you're an XRP holder from very way back, you're probably laughing, right? Thinking $3 is nothing. But to an outsider coming in right now, $3 per coin changes how you actually think about accumulating XRP. So I keep on digging, and I found a report that put this into even crazier perspective, right? They looked at what it would actually take to be considered a top holder of XRP nowadays. So to crack the top 10% on the XRP rich list, you need about 2,400 XRP. Now that would put your wallet in the top 10% of all XRP holders. 2,400 XRP. Now not long ago, that was like, whatever, a couple of thousand coins, do the math, 2,400 XRP at today's price, $3 plus some change. is around $7,500. So for the average person, $7,500 is actually a lot of money. So the report noted that the average salary earner in the US or the UK would actually have to save for months to accumulate 2,400 XRP right now. So can you imagine? Right? If you're in the middle class Joe, or you are a middle class Joe, you can't just casually become an XRP whale anymore, right? Not unless you've got a pretty fat wallet. So you're buying in little bits and pieces, right? And XRP's price success is literally making it harder for normal people to actually stack a large position. Now it's kind of an ironic kind of twist, right? The higher that it goes, the more expensive the club, of big holders gets. So at this point, I'm already kind of kicking myself for not grabbing more XRP earlier, as we probably all are, right? But Zena's warning had another layer to it. She's basically predicting that this trend will continue, right? That the number of XRP that you can buy for $1,000 will keep dropping as price rises. Her example was that if XRP hits $5, which isn't too crazy a leap from $3 and some change, then it's about a 60% increase. At $5, a lot of people would say, nope, too expensive for me. And you'll only scrape together maybe a few tokens like dust. Now, honestly, $5 doesn't even sound that high in crypto land, but psychologically it might be. We've kind of seen it with stocks too, right? Once the stock gets into the hundreds of dollars, regular investors buy fractional shares instead of a whole share. Crypto, it is no different. So Zena basically saying that XRP could reach a price where most people just give up on buying whole XRP and settle for fractions. Now, hearing that, I almost had a deja vu moment, like I've heard a very similar story before. And of course, that is when it clicked. Bitcoin, right? The big daddy of crypto. Once upon a time, Bitcoin was cheap enough that you could, at least a modest investor could, get several whole Bitcoins. Now, I'm not even talking about the super early days of $1 Bitcoin, right? But let's say 2014, right? Bitcoin was around $250 in mid-2014. So $1,000 could have got you 4 BTC back then. That's 4 entire Bitcoin for $1,000. Can you believe that, right? Now, today, those 4 Bitcoin are worth let's say, what's Bitcoin now in 2025? That's north of, $100,000 easy. So we're talking over $400,000. Crazy, right? But here is the kicker. If you have $1,000 today and you want to buy Bitcoin, you can only grab something like 0.008 of a BTC. Literally not even 1/100th of a Bitcoin. So we even have a kind of term for these kind of tiny little bytes, satoshis or sat, in basically Bitcoin dust. So most of us kind of plebs, I guess, deal in sats now because owning whole Bitcoins is for either the rich or the very lucky early birds. And Zena is basically saying that that's the fate of XRP, right? That someday, in the not so distant future, regular people will measure their XRP in drops. Like, ripple pun, of course, right? Now, or maybe in decimals. We'll keep it real. But because owning tons of XRP will be reserved for the wealthy folk or the OGs. Now, it kind of got chills, thinking about that. It was kind of like watching history repeat itself, right? 10 years ago, people said one day you'll only be able to own a fraction of a Bitcoin. And a lot of us were just laughing and didn't believe it. Now it's normal. Could XRP really be on that same trajectory, going from affordable altcoin that everyone kind of scooped up by the thousand, to expensive asset that you can only buy a slither of? And you know what? I started feeling a bit of a mix of FOMO and nostalgia at this point. FOMO for the obvious reasons, right? Nobody wants to be left behind if XRP is on a path to the moon. But nostalgia because I remember the times, not that long ago, when XRP was just this easy to get token, sitting quietly under $1 while the rest of the market kind of raged on. Now, back when the SEC lawsuit was looming over Ripple and everybody was uncertain, XRP was literally stuck in the doldrums, right? The kind of quiet phase. And people made jokes calling it a stable coin because it was literally so flat while others were pumping, right? And I'll be honest, I kind of ignored XRP during those moments. I mean, sure, I scooped up at 17 cents, I scooped up at 30 cents, but outside of that, I haven't really been buying a lot of XRP. It was that drama coin, right, with a lawsuit, and I thought, nah, plenty of fish in the sea. Well, tables turn. That once that kind of lawsuit situation kind of started to clear up back in 2023 and Ripple got its partial win, well, you remember when the judge basically said that XRP isn't a security for retail sales, right? Well, that was a huge news, and it kind of felt like the shackles had came off. Exchanges relisted XRP, excitement came back, and by 2025, here we are. XRP not only broke past the $1, it broke past $2 and then $3, right? It even nearly hit the old all-time high from 2018, which is around the $3.86 level. Suddenly, XRP woke up from a long sleep and said, I'm back, baby. And a lot of us were caught off guard. Now, I hopped into our free educational Discord server. The link, by the way, is in the description. I was after reading Zena's prediction, that is, and I had to just know what other people's thoughts were, right? It's a kind of chill place where, you know, we get to discuss crypto, and at least I knew a few people who would have opinions, shall we say. I'm like, guys, did I seriously miss the memo? XRP at $3. You think it's too late to grab some? And immediately, of course, a debate kicks off. Right, one person was like, too late, bro, $3 is still cheap if you think it's going to $10 or $100 eventually, right? Real moon boy vibes, right? But another person chimed in saying, nah, it's already pumped a lot. I'm not buying here, I'll wait for a pullback. And there's that kind of classic kind of pragmatic take. I'll just set a weekly buy for a small amount. If it dips, great. If it moons, at least I got some skin in the game. I love your Discord, but people, they do, of course, you know, keep it real. Now, I'm going to be honest here, right? I felt both ways. Part of me was pumping my fist that, you know, XRP was finally getting some respect. And part of me was like, man, did I miss the chance to stack even more when it was cheap? And it was a classic kind of investor paradox then, right? You want it to go up, but you know, only when it actually does, you kind of wish that you actually stayed low for longer until you accumulated more. Greedy humans, right? Now, speaking of accumulating, I came across some data that the big whales are actually still buying even at these $3 plus prices. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit too. Like if I were a whale, you know, who got in super early, maybe I'd be taking profits now. But no, apparently wallets holding 10 million to 100 million XRP have been increasing their stash, hitting a new high. So these whale accounts now actually hold 14% of all the XRP that is out there. And guess what happened when XRP dipped to around $2.95 recently? Well, instead of panic selling, big players actually bought that dip. So when I read that, I imagined some mega whale with a kind of a bib saying, thank you for the cheap XRP, nom nom. Now, it's kind of like I guess, reassuring that if you're bullish, right, that the big players, they still haven't lost any faith. And if anything, they're just loading up more. And so here I am, soaking in all of this information, right? Zena is saying that we're only going to be able to afford dust soon. The math showing $1,000 now yields crumbs of XRP. Examples of Bitcoin's trajectory, whales stacking up, new people rushing in. My brain's a bit of an overload here. So I start asking myself the tough question. Is it really too late to buy XRP now? Did I miss or totally miss the boat? And you know what? This is the part where I need to be super clear about something. And this one might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any money losses. And this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Now, with that said, here's how I personally see it. I don't think it's too late in the grand scheme of things, but it sure isn't early either. XRP at a few bucks is a far cry from the 30 cents that I was accumulating a few years ago, right? The easy money, right? The ridiculously profitable 10x gains might have already happened for this cycle, or maybe not. Nobody really knows. But one strategy that I've seen and I kind of follow is nibbling gradually. Like, I'm not going to go FOMO all in at $3, but I might buy a little bit on dips slowly and not lose sleep over the price that I paid. You know, actually, very true story here. After finishing that kind of late night research rabbit hole, I went on Kraken Pro to see how XRP was trading. And yes, I use Kraken Pro, shameless plug. The link in the description is an affiliate link in there. If you do use it, it supports the channel. You've got to pay for the coffee somehow, right? Now, the order book there was buzzing. Lots of people buying and selling, little green and red numbers flying around. And I placed a small buy order, you know, kind of just in case it kept going up, right? But let's go ahead and zoom out for a second. There's also probability that XRP cools off or even drops in the short term. Nothing goes up in straight lines forever, right? Markets breathe, they pull back, they shake out the weak hands, you know the drill. So here is something fun, or terrifying depending on your stance, but some analysts are already calling for $4 XRP in the near term. Kind of like in the next few weeks or even month. Right, there's even some, you know, Elliott wave theory guys out there who said that we're in the most profitable phase, right, of the wave and, you know, primed for $4 plus. Now, I'm not super into the technicals these days, but I do like Elliott wave. I do think it works very, very well if you implement it correctly. We do a lot of Elliott wave analysis down in the Discord, for example. So if you show me a chart with waves, you know, I do think that it has some decent merits to it as long as it follows the rules. Now, I'm not, well, at least I am kind of, I guess, one of those guys that will look at it and will place my bets accordingly. Now, I should actually acknowledge, you know, that not everyone is convinced that XRP will just keep on soaring non-stop, right? There are some skeptics and they might have some pretty valid points. For instance, some say, well, XRP's market cap is already huge at these prices, so don't expect another 10x overnight. And it's fair enough, after all, right? Market cap is only a representation of price, right? So for example, you take your price, you multiply it by the circulating coins, and you get your market cap, which means that market cap is a byproduct of your price discovery. A lot of people wrongly take a look at market cap and say you can't possibly have a market cap of X value because, you know, they just can't comprehend the big number. But really, it's the wrong thing to be looking at. After all, it is the price that dictates the market cap. So rather than looking at the market cap, we probably should be thinking about what moves the price. That's your supply and your demand. What's going to increase your supply while simultaneously lowering your supply while increasing your demand, I should say. Now that's going to dictate your price, right? And then your price is going to dictate your market cap. Now others, of course, they do point out that the competition in payments, you know, like various stable coins or even other cryptocurrencies could cap XRP's upside. So let's not forget, right, the SEC's case, it isn't fully over just yet. There could be appeals, there could be other regulatory hurdles as well. However, none of those, you know, cautionary points really changed the core observations that we started with here. Right now, XRP has leaped into a new price realm that makes accumulating big bags a lot harder for the average person. Now, that's just a simple fact. So let's think about the psychology, right? When XRP was under $1, a lot of people thought maybe I'll get 1,000 XRP. Who knows, right? If it hits $10 someday, I'll have 10K. Nice. Now, it was a common casual goal, right? I saw that stat that only 4% of XRP holders have 10,000 or more XRP. Not sure how accurate that is, but it sounds about right since 10,000 XRP now is $30,000 worth. Not many people can throw 30K at a single cryptocurrency. So yeah, the 10K XRP club is pretty elite right now, and the 1K club is getting thinner. So if the price keeps rising, we might actually start talking about 100 XRP Club someday as the achievement. That's nuts, but very possible. And here's the funny thing, right? If you're an XRP holder who's kind of been stacking for years, you might be sitting on a pile that suddenly went from feeling, mediocre to feeling like a treasure trove, right? Now, for me, the whole saga was a bit of a wake-up call about the nature of bull runs and how quickly sentiment can shift. 1 minute you're delusional and the next you're exuberant, right? Then you're anxious because it's just too late. All of that, all in the span of just a year, right? It taught me to at least not to take cheap prices for granted. Now, whether you're a diehard XRP holder or just a crypto curious guy, there's a bigger picture here, right? It's not just about one coin getting pricey. It's actually about the adoption and belief, right? The reason that Bitcoin went from something anyone could afford to something that only fractionally affordable is because enough people believed in its value and its future. If XRP is on a similar trajectory, it means a lot of people are finding value in what XRP offers. All right, so we've covered a lot, but here are my key takeaways. Crypto moves fast. One day you're able to buy coins by the thousands. The next day you're counting decimals, right? It happened with Bitcoin and it's happening with XRP, and it will happen again with other coins in the future. So here I am wrapping up my little investigation for you guys, feeling a bit of mix of satisfaction and motivation. Satisfaction that I cracked this dust of XRP mystery and got to the bottom of why people are saying that. And motivation because it reminds me of all the opportunities, or at least that opportunities are time sensitive, I guess, and that if you snooze, you do really lose. So subscribe for more crazy crypto adventures and I'll catch you all in the next one.